Hello there, and welcome to the Meaningful Stitch. This is episode 34, and I am Amy Palko, and I'm coming to you from Edinburgh, Scotland. And this is the place where I get to share with you my knitting practice and my knitting projects. Now, I'm going to crack on with a little bit of admin before we get into all of the knitting goodness, and I haven't been podcasting for, maybe just over a month now, so there's a lot of knitting goodness. But before we get to all of that, I just want you to know that all the show notes, everything that I reference, is available for you in the description box just below this video. However, if you click through to Patreon, you'll be able to access a free post that will have all the show notes plus some images as well. I get to make a little bit more of a thing of the show notes over on Patreon. If you would like to support me, you can also do that over on Patreon. And I also have a Ko-Fi link now, which is also available in the description box below. So that's all of that part of the admin. I've got one other piece of admin before we crack on. And that is, in the last video, we had a giveaway. Now, Jo of Snowy Thistle Knits very kindly gave me a shawl cuff, and she gave me 2 to give away to you. This is what they look like. So these are shawl cuffs, which basically you would use them to basically attach around your shawl, and then it sits like that. And it means that your shawl doesn't fall off, which is quite handy, particularly when it's been very blustery. And it's been very windy here. In fact, I was going to record yesterday and couldn't because the sound of the wind was so intrusive. So these are the beautiful shawl cuffs, and I have drawn 2 winners using a random YouTube comment picker. We had 341 comments, and the winners are Susan Cormack and Sally Idso. So please, if you could both get in touch with me through the comments below, and I will get in touch with you and follow up and get your addresses and get these beautiful shawl cuffs, one each, sent out to you. So congratulations. Okay, you ready for a card? Because at the beginning of my podcasts, I always like to share a card that I've drawn from one of my many Oracle and Tarot decks. And this time I'm drawing it from the Goddess Oracle. I think I drew from this one last time as well. It's a beautiful deck by Amy Sophia Marashinsky, illustrated by Harana Janto. And the card that I've drawn for us today is this one here. And it's Artemis. Now, Artemis might be quite a familiar goddess to you. She is from the ancient Greek pantheon, and she's one of the virgin goddesses. Virgin meaning one unto oneself, so completely independent and with self-autonomy and sovereignty. With Artemis, we also have her as the archeress, so she has a great deal of focus. She's able to fix her sights on a target and move with great momentum towards it. She has a great sense of centering, so whenever we feel like we might be a little bit out of balance, Artemis is a very good goddess to draw upon, her energy to draw upon. The other thing about Artemis is she's a great nature goddess, and so she really reminds us that one of the ways in which we can find our centre is by going out into nature. And certainly nature around here is particularly beautiful, although we are tipping towards the very end, the very tippy end of autumn, and so the leaves are mostly going now, and but we're still getting beautiful sunsets, beautiful sunrises. Nature is absolutely putting on a show. Although I do know over in the States and in Canada, you seem to have got winter very, very early, in which case I hope you're keeping very cozy and that you're watching this and keeping all snuggled up. Okay, one of the things about Artemis as well is that she really helps us to finish our projects. And I have quite a few finished projects for you. But before I get onto those, I'm just going to share with you what I'm wearing. And the first thing that I'm going to share with you is this. Now, this was last year's Stephen West MCAL, and it was called Shawlography. And I really liked Shawlography. There was a bit of opinion split, like there was on the most recent MCAL, which I also loved and which I will be sharing with you my version later on. But I wanted to start off with this one in particular because the way in which I chose my colours for this, and I know people really struggle to choose colours colours for shawls when we already, or garments where we already know the design, but it's really difficult to choose one for a mystery knit along when we don't know what the outcome is going to be. So what I did for this particular one is I drew upon the colours in this knitting bag. So I had the two lighter and the darker red here, and then I had the lighter gold and the darker gold, and then I had this beautiful smoky purple, which mine is a little bit brighter than that. I decided not to go for the green because I didn't want it to end up looking a little bit too Christmassy, and I think sometimes red and green together can have that effect, although not necessarily in this bag. And the reason why I decided to share with you this shawl today is partially because I'm going to be sharing with you my Stephen West MCAL from this year, Twists and Turns, but also because of this bag and its inspiration, because this was my Gran's knitting bag. One of the reasons why I haven't podcast for a while is that my Gran passed away on the 4th of October, and we had her funeral on the 13th. At her funeral, my auntie had written a really beautiful eulogy. She did such a good job of it. And one of the things she mentioned was that my Gran and her Aunt Mina, who was a great favourite of hers, and she was the schoolmistress up in Evie in Orkney. So my Aunt Mina took my Gran when she was a little girl, I think when she was just 12 years old, on the Flying Scotsman down to London, where her uncle, so Aunt Mina's brother, Omond, had a haberdashery shop. And my auntie speculated that this had been a profoundly important experience for my Gran, because she then tried to recreate the haberdashery in her own home. So it's good to know I come by that honestly. I too have a rather substantial stash of yarn and haberdashery. So I just wanted to share that with you, that, you know, that's why I was wearing this shawl. And the other thing I wanted to share with you was that my auntie very kindly returned this to me. And you might remember this because I was knitting this when I was podcasting. There we go. Quite a wee while back now, 2 years past, it'll be 2 years in January, I think. I knitted this, and it's the Cinnabar by Andrea Mowry. I've knitted it in a single flock East Midburn 4-ply hand-dyed from Chandlers, North Berwick, which is this lovely shade of pink. And I've matched it with a Zauberball, and I think the colourway for that was Piano Bar. And so yes, this is the Cinnabar shawl. It's a great big shawl, although it is a little bit smaller now than it was when I gave it to her, because I think the care home staff have possibly put it through the washing machine. It is slightly felted, not badly, just enough to make it even cosier, actually. And actually I take great comfort in knowing that this brought my Gran some warmth and some coziness. So when I received it, I gave it a wash in some eucalan. I've got some jasmine scented eucalan, which has got lanolin in it. So when you wash with eucalan, you add it to the water, to some tepid water, and you wash your garment, and then you let it sit and soak, and then you don't actually have to rinse it out, because the lanolin itself will then stay within the garment and create a kind of a protective layer around the fibres. And certainly once I washed and blocked this, it's softened up quite a lot, and some of the impact of the felting has been released a little bit. So it's a little bit more drapey and a bit more pliable than it was before. But there we go. I just wanted to share that with you too. I think I shared with you another version of the Cinnabar last time I recorded, which was my own. So now I have two. And I had a little label attached to it for Gran, so it wouldn't go missing at the care home. So there we go. That's two shawls. And underneath my shawl, and I'm actually quite warm, so I'm going to pop that down here for just now. This is my Flax, and it's a free pattern, a Flax Light actually. It's the free pattern from Tin Can Knits, and I have altered it because if you're familiar with this pattern, you'll know that there's a garter stitch panel that runs down both sleeves. And obviously I don't have that. Let me see if I can show you better. There we go. I have a fish scale lace panel that runs down mine. And I just wanted to share that with you because I think it's just such an easy way to adapt a simple raglan sweater. So I used this book here, which is Lace and Eyelets, 250 Stitches to Knit. So it's a stitch dictionary. It's been edited by Erica Knight. Those of us that were knitting through the 90s and the early noughties will probably be very familiar with Erica Knight. She was very, very popular back then. She had a wonderful book, which I knitted quite a lot from, for Knits for Cherished Babies. Thought that was really lovely. And she had a lot of homeware knits as well that she did. And she actually has a range of wool out now too. And I noticed that she's bringing some more designs out. So anyway, this is an older book, but it has all of these wonderful stitch patterns. Oh, no, that's not the same one. It's close, it's close. So basically I knew that, and I'm not giving anything away here because like I said, it's a free pattern. I think the garter stitch panel that runs down the sleeve is 20 stitches. And this lace panel here is 17 stitches. So I knew that it would sit quite comfortably and would have the same kind of proportions for the design. I moved it, but I knew it wouldn't fit exactly in, so I brought it slightly forward so that the lace is further forward than towards the back. I'm really pleased with it. This yarn as well is Drops Alpaca, which is a 4-ply, 100% alpaca, and I really love this lavender shade. And the reason why I'm wearing this is because alpacas also feature quite strongly in my podcast episode this time round. So there we go, that's the Flax Light, just a plain raglan sweater with a modification of adding in the stitch panel, because it doesn't, a modification to a garment or to an accessory doesn't need to be a difficult thing. We can use these stitch dictionaries to make something a really simple but very effective change. So there we go, that's what I'm wearing. Now on to what I've finished. Now, because it's been a while since I last podcasted, I do have quite a few things to share. Perhaps not as many as you might think, however, because obviously the beginning of the month was quite upsetting, and then about halfway through the month I came down with the flu. I now know that I've never had the flu before because, oh my goodness. You know, when you have a bad cold and you think, is this the flu? Trust me, it's not the flu, it's just a bad cold. I was out of action basically, well, certainly for a full week, and it took another week after that really to start to feel a little bit more like myself. You can perhaps still hear it in my throat a little. I'm a little bit huskier than I usually am. I'm possibly, just listening to myself, possibly a little bit lower pitched, but I have my tea, I've got a large glass of water, so I'm pretty sure I'm going to be able to get through everything I have to share with you. But that's a reason why I perhaps don't have as much. I do have quite a bit of knitting, but perhaps not as much as you would think for the length of time that I've not podcasted. Okay, so, just in case anybody's interested, I don't tend to drink fancy tea. This is Tetley, black tea with whole milk, which is what I drink all the time. I probably have, I can't even tell you how many cups of tea I have during a day. It would be embarrassing. But I start off with 2 cups of tea in the morning, certainly have a third before lunch, good few in the afternoon, and I have my last cup of tea probably about 10 o'clock at night, so I drink a lot of tea. So there we go, a big slurp of that before we begin. Right, I'm going to start with the thing that has been on the needles for the longest and which gave me the greatest feeling of relief to have finished. Can you guess what it is? It is the black kilt hose. This pattern is the Lord of the... How many times have I said this? It's the Lord of the Isles kilt socks by Kate Davies. They are a pair of kilt hose. There you go. And you can see just about that it's got this cable design on it, which basically looks like interlocking hearts with almost like a strand of DNA that runs right up through the centre. Those of you that have watched this podcast before, you know that this is not the first time that I've knitted these kilt socks. I knitted them first 2 years ago for my middle son. I have 3 children. My daughter is the eldest, and then I have Seb, who is the middle, and Xander, who's the youngest. So I knitted a pair for Seb 2 years ago. I knitted a pair last year for my daughter's partner, Sam, and this year I have knitted for my youngest. I'm really hoping that next year I don't have to knit these for anybody. Because also, if you've seen this podcast before, you know that I'm not a big sock knitter. It's not my happy place. I will knit socks for my loved ones when they require or when they ask me to, because I love to make them happy. But I would say that for my own personal knitting practice, it's not something I particularly enjoy. These socks in particular are late. So my son had his 21st birthday at the very tippy end of September. And on 21st birthdays for the boys, we get them kilts. And we have collected money together from the family, contributed money ourselves. I've commissioned my daughter to make the kilt itself, and we purchased all the different parts and pieces, and we did all of that back in September. The kilt, the tartan was delayed from the mill. The mill weaves the wool and tartan fabric, and I think Aurora was saying you need between 7 and 9 meters. Xander's not a particularly large boy, so I suspect it might be a 7 or 8 meter kilt, but it's still a lot of fabric. And the mill didn't have the particular tartan that he wanted. So we've had to wait quite a long time to get that fabric, but we now have it, and my daughter started to make the kilt. So along with that, there has been a delay on his kilt socks. And this is because he wanted them in black. Now, this is the same boy who I knitted his black Albion jumper earlier this year. I gave the children vouchers to have to co-create a jumper with me that I would knit for them this year, and Xander chose the Albion by Michelle Wong, and he wanted it in black. So I knitted that in black, and now I've knitted his kilt socks in black. The problem with knitting in black in October, September wasn't so bad, and I just couldn't, for some reason I just couldn't get going with it. He sent me his measurements quite late. He was away over the summer, so I'm just making excuses. But but the problem with knitting black at this time of year is that you really cannot see your stitches. You need to be in the daylight. I know lots of people have given me lots of different pieces of advice, and I've tried it, and I just cannot knit on black garments or accessories when I don't have natural daylight. I find it very challenging. It's like the stitches start to dance on the needles. Then I can't make hide nor hair of them. That's fine. I actually could knit on that for the ribbing, because obviously that's just 2x2. But for doing the cables, there was just no way. And so basically I was trying to get 1 or 2 cable repeats done in a day. And I finally got through them and then completed the cuffs just last weekend. So I cannot tell you how relieved I am to finally have these complete. I used Essential DK by West Yorkshire Spinners. It's unfortunately it is a discontinued yarn line from them. They do still have the Essential sock, which is the 4-ply, but I don't think they're doing the DK anymore. I used 3 balls of this. This is how much I've got left of the second ball, and it is quite a large amount left, but I wouldn't have been able to have completed it without the 3rd ball. So each sock was knitted with 1 ball, and then had to join for a bit of the the cuff at the top. I used Jenny's surprisingly stretchy bind off for the cuff. It is a toe up sock. You do a Turkish cast on at the beginning. I think it is a short row heel. You can tell I don't normally talk to you about socks because I can't remember the terminology for all of it. And yes, like I said, Jenny's surprisingly stretchy bind off. So it's, of course, it's massive because boys have big feet. Well, my boys certainly have big feet. You're also knitting the length of their leg. My boys have long legs. And then you have a large folded cuff. So this will sit just below his knee. There will be a garter, bit of elastic that sits underneath this, and then it will come out over that. And then you'll have a small flat, what we call the flashes. And the flashes are a little bit of tartan that sits down here, which matches the kilt tartan. So my daughter Aurora will be making those also. The other thing about the kilt socks is this is where you tuck in your ski and do, which is a small blunt dagger, which sits, and strangely, you know, there's lots of regulations and everything around carrying blades, as you know, in the UK as other places. But this, because it's part of formal wear, is actually one of the few exceptions. So, so yes, he'll have his wee ski and do tucked in to his sock. And as you can see, I haven't woven my ends in, but these are the only ends I have to weave in. So that's relatively easy. And then I just need to wash and block them, which I also have not done. And I think once I do that, the cables will pop a little bit better. I am hoping that once he has his whole outfit, that we'll be able to get some photographs and then I'll be able to share them with you. But for now, my job here is done, more or less, and I don't think I will ever knit another pair of black kilt hose ever again. That's it. Okay, so the next thing that I have completed is this. Now, this is a Getting Warmer cowl. Oh wow, really blew out there. It's in a beautiful yarn from Ginger Twist, which is called Chunky Baby, which is 100% baby alpaca. I'll be talking more about that a little bit later. Those of you who have been on my Instagram might know what I'm referring to, but the rest of you will know just shortly. So this is a free pattern from Espace Tricot, and it's basically it's just a cowl. So I'll show you what it looks like on. So we have the broad rib that sits round like that, and then we've got the garter. And of course it's garter in the round, which means that you are purling every second round. Now, the other issue with garter in the round is it creates a seam. And so one of the big modifications that I've made to this pattern, and again, you probably have seen me talk about this pattern before if you've watched previous episodes, is that I knit this part here using helical knitting. Now, helical knitting is really, really very straightforward. Basically, when you're knitting in the round, you're actually knitting a spiral, if you can imagine. So with helical knitting, you're stopping 3 stitches before the end of the next spiral, and then you add an extra ball of yarn, and then you knit all the way around, stopping again 3 stitches before your next, and then you slip those 3 stitches, and then you knit around again. So what you're basically doing is you're just layering up this spiral, so you don't actually then create a single point which then becomes a seam. So it's very good for stripes, and it's very good for garter knitting in the round, because this now does not have a seam. It's also good for hand-dyed yarns, because you don't want to then create pooling. And this is a hand-dyed yarn. It's, like I said, it's from Ginger Twist. This colour is Darjeeling, which I don't think she's got available right now, but it's the most beautiful shade of royal blue. And because it's this chunky baby alpaca, I honestly can't tell you just how incredibly soft this is. But it's very, very super snuggly. I have used a German twisted cast on, which has kind of created this stretch for the ribbing. And for the cast off, I have done an Icelandic bind off. Again, an Icelandic bind off is actually a very simple bind off. You knit 2 stitches, so you knit 1 stitch, pop that stitch back onto the needle that you've just taken it from, and then you knit the second stitch through the first. So you put your needle through the first stitch, as with a knit stitch, through that second stitch, and then knit that, and then take it off. Take both the stitches off, and then pop the 1 stitch back onto. I've not described that very well. I will leave a link to how you do an Icelandic bind off. But trust me, it's really simple, and it's really, really good for when you are binding off in garter. It is my go-to bind off for garter. So that's another one that's off the needles. And actually this is a gift, so I won't say who the gift is for, but I'll be popping that in the post really soon. So those are 2 slightly smaller projects, but they are both complete. I'll pop them down here, and very relieved to have them done. The next one I've got completed is a little bit larger, and it is my Felix jumper, which I've knitted as part of the Unspun Heroes Cal, which is a very informal cal that's being run. There's no giveaways or anything. It's just, do you want to knit with unspun yarn? You do? Okay. then check out the hashtag on Instagram, and you might get some inspiration, and you might also see some other podcasters. I know that the Knitty Stew and Selma from Little Big Knits, and I think Casey from Young Folk Knits has also been doing, and Jana from Finnish Knitting Stories has just completed the most beautiful ranunculus. So yeah, there are a few podcasters that are participating in the Unspun Heroes Cal, but this was mine, and it's in a beautiful shade of Nutiden, which I think is called Tunet, which I think I found out before means like I suppose like your backyard. It's like your plot of land. And this is, like I said, it's the Felix by Amy Christoffers. It's got this beautiful eyelet detail for the raglan increases. I have knitted this with a single strand of Nutiden held with a single strand of Holst Titicaca, which is 100% alpaca, and it's lace weight. So rather than, I know a lot of people are holding single strand or double strand even of unspun yarn with mohair, but I wanted to try it with the 100% alpaca because it's not fluffy and it doesn't create more of a halo. It does still absolutely have a halo, but that's really coming from the Nutiden. So the Nutiden was gifted to me by Marion, which is a very, very kind gift. Still have just under a full plate left, maybe about, well, I'm saying just under, maybe about 3/4 of a plate left. So I was actually thinking about maybe holding that double and doing a matching hat. I did make some mods, which just to the sleeve here. I've knitted the sleeve straight rather than doing any of the decreases, and then I've just done a row of decreases, knitting 2 together all the way around, and a short cuff. So it's kind of created slightly balloon sleeves, but it's just a bit more relaxed. It was fun to knit. I've knitted with Nutiden before, but I hadn't knitted with Nutiden single strand. I had always knitted Nutiden double. So this has kind of created a very, very light and very, very lofty fabric. You can see my hand through it. So it is a very lightweight, but it's actually very warm, which is lovely. So, you know, I've been layering it up with long sleeve tees underneath, very much like this actually. And that's been very comfortable. The colour of the yarn is this beautiful sagey green, and it's quite variegated actually. And I think that's augmented by the marling with the Titicaca. So I'm really pleased with this. It's very easy to wear. It's, I think, as Casey would call it, it's a bougie sweatshirt. So yes, it's very easy to wear. It's very comfortable. It's light. It's warm. And yeah, the yarn was lovely to work with. Unspun yarn is has a bit of a learning curve when we're knitting with it, just because it breaks so easily, and we have to kind of adjust our tension and our way of working with it. Because I had already knitted a garment, I knitted the Soiree sweater by Emily Foden. Because I'd already knitted with Nutiden before, I understood a bit better on how to hold my yarn and how to tension it. So I felt like this went a little bit easier from the very beginning than the Soiree sweater, which was certainly more of a learning curve. So there we go. That's my beautiful Felix. I think actually Taylor from Fibre from the People, who has the Wool Needles Hands, what's it, podcast. Is that what she's still got, or is it the Cozy Corner? I can't remember the name, but Taylor. Hi Taylor. I love her podcast, and she's been doing a Felix for Fall cowl. So if you want to go and explore some other Felixes, you absolutely can. You might remember as well, in my last episode, I had completed the Felix cardigan using Drops Brushed Alpaca Silk. So this means that I now have the cardigan, and I now have the sweatshirt, so the jumper. So I'm really pleased with that. And I have one more finished object for you. So I do have quite a few things. The next thing that I have is the Stephen West MCAL Twists and Turns. Now, I don't think I need to say spoilers or anything like that anymore because it's complete. You only had to do that through October, so I'm assuming that everybody has now seen the finished article, and I will show you mine. So I was knitting this while I had, part of it certainly, while I had the flu, which meant that the thing that I was knitting really sort of concentratedly on was these tiny I-cords for the cable detail. These I-cords took me days just because I wasn't able to knit. That's how you know when you're really sick, hey, is that you can't actually pick up your knitting needles. And that was absolutely the state that I was in. And then this clue here took me a very, very long, felt like it took me a very long time. These stripes here just went on and on and on for me, just basically because I wasn't well, not because they're particularly difficult or trying knitting. But I'll just talk through my yarn that I've used. This is Grubby Pink by Stranded Dye Works, Jude at Stranded Dye Works. Who's a hand dyer up in Fife, which I can see from my window. So, hi Jude. And this is Olan Amber, and these are both merino singles. And then I have a linen merino blend, which is also a single, and this is called Shiver, the colourway, and it's from Nervous Fibre. So those are my 3 colours, and I decided that I wanted to add in a Mohair Dare. And where is that gone? Ah, there it is. A Mohair Dare. Now, as far as Mohair Dares go, this is not particularly daring. This is Sage, and it's Kid Silk from Cowgirl Blues. So I decided I was going to add that to this shade of Shiver, but only for these long twisted stitch strips, which you can see there. So they've got this lovely fluffy halo. So I really love the design. It was a lot of fun to do. I know a lot of people really struggled with the start because it was a huge amount of knitting. Actually, I generally think that the knitting for this MCAL was spaced quite well across the clues. Sometimes you get clues which are significantly less knitting in previous MCALs, and I didn't find that in this one. I felt like it was kind of the same amount the whole way across. But we did these fantastic braids that you can see here, which involved a lot of casting on and casting off in order to create what almost looked like I-cord strips. Actually, they weren't I-cords, but because you're casting on and casting off, you're creating these strips which you then braided, and then you attached them to complete the last clue there. And then we had short row wedges, which were here with a little bit of twisted rib. We had this cable section and these fabulous I-cord embellishments, which I had never seen before or done. And then we knitted these long strips with these twisted stitch wave pattern, and then we used our live stitches and we picked up as we went along to create these striped triangles, which are a combination of garter and stockinette. And then we added in this twisted stitch chevron section and finished it off again with this striped stockinette, garter, chevron and an I-cord. So it's a very long shawl. It's an interesting shape. There we go. It's a very, very long shawl. That's half of it, and I'm not getting all of it in the picture. But actually, because of that, you can actually wear it a little bit more as a scarf, I think. I like to wear it like this and really bring the chevrons down at the front there, but you could actually take these longer bits here and like pass them again around, so you could actually stay really, really very cozy like this, which I think is really lovely. And then it sits nicely underneath your coat as well. Isn't that lovely? I really like that. I'm so pleased with my colour choices. I really love how this minty sagey green plays against the warmth of the grubby pink and the amber. The grubby pink was such a joy to knit with because of the speckles, and a lot of the speckles picked up the shades of amber. It was just a lot of fun, and it was a beautiful and joyful distraction from everything that was kind of going on that was so challenging in October. So it was, yeah, it was a lot of fun to knit. And I also really love being a part of the whole MCAL community as well, you know, both on Ravelry and on Instagram. It's always nice to see how other people's shawls are knitting up in their colour choices, and I think it really gives you a good sense of what's possible. The other thing I really enjoy is seeing other people's modifications. I always think it's quite a brave thing to modify an MCAL on the way through before you even know how it's going to work out. And I suppose that's why we call it a Mohair Dare, because that's partially a little textural modification with the fibre choice there. But yes, I've seen lots of people do lots of different modifications to the MCAL, particularly when we came towards the end here. There's some people who have done really interesting, sort of almost scalloped. I think the Knitting Hobbit did a beautiful knitted scallop, which was done in the twisted stitch instead of having the chevrons. I've seen people create lovely like strings of pom-poms or tassels and attaching those to these points here. I am not sure if I'm going to do any of that. As you see, this is the yarn that I've got left. So I do actually have enough yarn to do some tassels, but I'm just going to live with it just now and see kind of if I want to do that. I might do it at some later stage. But that's the thing, isn't it? Is if we do hold on to the yarn scraps, the yarn leftovers, then there are possibilities for us. There are opportunities to creatively adapt and change the garments or the accessories as we go. And so I will be just keeping it as it is for just now, and then maybe later on I'll add some further embellishments. We shall see. I do also have enough for a hat or something as well, although that might be a bit OTT. I don't know. Oh, some tea. Here we go. I'm feeling a little bit rough in my throat. I hope it's not affecting the recording too much. But there we go. That is my completed MCAL. It is washed, it's blocked, it's been worn a few times. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. I am already looking forward to the next knit along, which is going to be the Fibre knit along, and I will talk a little bit more about that later on as it pertains to acquisitions, or what I like to call new to me. So that's all my finished objects, but I do have quite a few whips to share with you also. I'm going to start with the first thing, which is not in a project bag because I am knitting from a cone, which doesn't necessarily fit all that well in. Obviously it's not a terribly portable project. I'm not averse to taking a cone on a bus, however, which I have done in the past. But I'm holding Holst Super Soft in the colour Viola, which is unfortunately discontinued and which is why I bought the cone. And I'm holding it with some Drops Kid Silk in the colour Lavender. So I'm holding those two together and I am knitting the Cargill sweater by Rebecca Clow, who is the Crea Bea. If you're familiar with her podcast, you'll have seen this beautiful design move through its stages of development, and then it was finally launched last month, and I was so excited to cast it on. I decided this was going to be my birthday sweater because I like to knit a sweater for myself through the month of October, and so that I have it to wear on my birthday. As this is in the works in progress section and not in the finished objects section, you'll see that I didn't quite get there this year, but I'm so enjoying this knit. Look at this stitch. Isn't it absolutely beautiful? I really, really love it. And the way you do the short row shaping for the neck to raise the neck so it sits nicely, is done so cleverly to integrate the textural pattern. The symmetry along the lines of the raglan I really love as well. I think that just looks really effective. I have split for the sleeves and I am now, as you can see, working on the body now. So I'm just about maybe 1.5 inches, maybe 2 inches down the body. So I think the body, you're supposed to do about 11 inches before you do the ribbing. So I've got a good bit to still go on this, but I am now on a smaller circumference, so that's speeding things up significantly. You might just see my little stitch marker there, which is from Blue Dot. There you go. I remembered. Kate. Hi, Kate. I could remember your name. I was just trying to remember the name of the company. So I will leave a little link to her Etsy shop as well, because I just love these little stitch markers that I picked up at 2021 Perth Yarn Festival. So there we go. So yes, it's a really enjoyable knit, but it's not a very fast knit. Because you're basically doing this dip stitch, and then you are doing rib in between. So it's not a fast knit, which is fine, but it is a very addictive one. I find it, I become a little bit obsessive about it. I don't want to put it down. And that's resulting in now some quite good progress. I didn't work on it at all while I was trying to get the kilt socks finished, and also the gift knit of the Getting Warmer cowl. I really wanted to get them done. The Felix pullover took much longer than it should have, because I wasn't well. I basically just had one sleeve to complete for the longest time, so I just blasted through that to get it done and off needles. But it did mean that this, because I was so focused on finishing off all of those other projects, very Artemis of me, it meant that this project didn't quite get the love that I am getting to pour into it just now. I think it is so beautiful, and I cannot wait for it to be finished. It's not that dissimilar from the colour I'm wearing, but it's a bit brighter. I think it's just lovely. One of the things I will say about it is because I was knitting my swatch and I got very confused in my swatch, and I thought that I had completely the wrong gauge. I am not that great with numbers. I'm a very clever person, as I like to tell myself. I do have a PhD. I have taught at university level I taught for over a decade to university students. But I do really struggle with numbers. It's not my comfort place. And so sometimes when I'm doing a swatch, I can get quite sort of turned around. And then I struggle to figure out if I need to go up needle sizes or down needle sizes, or I also struggle with time difference, when we move the clocks forwards and back, and then I have to try and figure out what time is it over in the east coast of the US. That kind of thing really throws me. So all of those kinds of things, that kind of fluency with moving with numbers kind of eludes me and has done my whole life. But I did have a very particular experience of that, partially because I didn't properly read the pattern, and it was speaking about the stitch pattern, because the stitch is played out over 6 stitches, but when you create the dip stitches, you then have 8 stitches, and I was counting the 8 stitches rather than just the 6 when I was trying to figure out my gauge. So I'm just mentioning that just now in case any of you are skim reading the pattern rather than reading it properly, and then you're struggling to figure out your gauge. It is all there in the pattern. It was me. So once I realised that that's what I was doing, and I didn't have too many stitches, I then made quite quick progress. I just cast on and I've got gauge. So it's all good. I'm knitting the size 4, which is going to give me around about 5 inches, I think, 5 to 6 inches of positive ease. So it's not going to sit really, really close to my body. It's going to be a bit more of a comfortable fit, which is what I wanted. I've seen some lovely modifications for necklines. I think it's the Prolific Knitter. She has done a I-cord bind off for the neck, and that looked very pretty. I think the original pattern has you do a folded neckline, I think. So I've yet to make a choice on exactly what I'm going to do for that, but as you can see, I've got a little while before I need to start thinking about that. So anyway, there's my Cargill, and I should say too actually that Rebecca has just launched the Cargill cowl. So if you really like the look of this fabric, but the idea of doing a whole sweater project in it feels a little bit daunting. Or even if you just want to have a go at doing the stitch pattern and getting comfortable with it, or even would stand as an extended gauge swatch, then you might want to check out the Cargill Cowl. It is a charity release with all proceeds from now till the end of November going to the Fistula Foundation, which is a very worthy cause. Rebecca speaks about it really, really well in the video that she launched, the podcast that she launched the pattern in, so I'm going to link to that in the show notes. But basically, a fistula is a result of birth trauma, which can result in double incontinence, which then can lead to ostracization within communities in rural and developing parts of the world. And so the Fistula Foundation provides operations to correct that trauma and to allow the healing following birth to really occur. And so it's an amazing foundation, it's an amazing charity, and with a bit of luck and with all of our support, then hopefully we'll be able to fund or help fund a number of these operations. So like I say, very worthy cause. It's very reasonably priced. So go ahead and click through to check out that pattern and buy yourself a copy, because you will not only end up with a beautiful cowl, but you also get to support women in other parts of the world, and I think that's an incredibly important thing. So that's my first work in progress. My second work in progress is this. I haven't made very much progress on it, but I'm just going to share it with you because when I was really unwell, I wasn't able to maintain my body temperature, and I wasn't having fevers, but I was having chills. My body temperature would plummet, and then I would really struggle to warm back up again. And it's times like that you really appreciate having so much woolly layers available to you. And the woolly layer that I found myself reaching for over and over again, in fact, both my woolly layers were my half and half triangle wraps. Now I have this one, which is in linen quill, bright flamingo, yellow turmeric. You're familiar with this one. And the other one was the first one that I knitted, which was in Holst Super Soft in sweet pea and cinnamon. So because, and also I just recently finished off a half and half triangles wrap that my friend Jen did the majority of the knitting on, and I just completed because it turned out I was allergic to one of the colourways. And have given that to my daughter, and she wears it every day. She's very knit-worthy, and she wears her half and half wrap every single day. So I was thinking I could really go another one, but I don't really want to knit the 2-colour one. I'm really interested in the new pattern that's just come out from Pearl Soho, which is the striped one, which uses 6 colours. So then I was thinking, okay, well, which 6 colours would I use? And I've had a lot of time to lie on a sofa feeling very sorry for myself, unable to pick up my knitting needles just because I was so exhausted and unwell, and dream about future knitting. And this is the shawl that I dreamt about. So I have cast it on now that I'm feeling a little bit better. So this is the striped half and half triangle wrap, which is a free pattern from Pearl Soho. You will have seen this if you watch knitting podcasts. You will have seen a lot of these. As you can see, I've really not made that much progress on mine. It's really just that it started in one evening, but I will show you my colours. So I'll pop up a photograph of what the half and half striped triangles wrap looks like, and you'll see that on one side of one triangle is like colour blocked and the other triangle is striped. So you start with the colour blocked triangle. So I'm going to have this gorgeous pink, which is from a mystery Shetland cone that I picked up in a charity shop. I'm sure I've shown you this before because I used it in my birthday jumper last year, which was the Sugar by Julia Wilkins, and these were my dots, my sugar dots. So I've still got lots of this cone left. So I wound it into a very wonky cake. Once I completed it, I wasn't paying much attention while I was doing it. Surprised, I know, right? And because of that, when I finally looked at it, I realised that it had all gone terribly wrong, but actually I didn't have the energy to fix it. So we've just ended up with a very wonky cake. So that's my first colour. And then after that, I'm going to have this one here, which is Holst Super Soft in the colour Straw. And then I'm going to have this colour here, which is the Burgundy Red Woolly Knit British Wool, which I've also got a cone of. So that's going to be the three colours in the colour blocked triangle. And then on the other side, I'm going to have this, which is the Scots Pine, and again it is Holst Super Soft. And then I'm going to have Brandy, which is Holst Super Soft, and I'm going to finish off with Scarab, which is also Holst Super Soft. So this is going to be the striped, so this is going to be the pointy corner. It's going to be the long, the edge, the long edge. So that's going to be my striped triangle, and with the other going to be, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to, oh, no. So that, so that'll give you a bit of an idea of what that's going to look like. But I'm really pleased with my colour choices. I think this is going to be fun. It's these really kind of hot shades. And then we've got these shades here, which are much more muted. And it's just about trying to figure out where the best position for that was. And I looked at the various different examples on the Pearl Soho site, and that really helped me to kind of figure out my own position for the colours. But basically, and you can also look at their kits, and I think the kits really help you decide on which colours you might want to use. Basically, what I surmised from it is that you have two colour families, and then you have different variations of tone within each colour family. So I went for these kind of hot reds and pinks and the dark burgundy, and I went for these kind of more neutral golds. So that was how I put together my 6 shades, and then I've mixed them up. I've crossed over some of the hot with some of the more neutral in order to create my palette and the layout of the wrap. So it'll be quite interesting. I was looking through the pattern too, and there was a few different techniques compared with the straightforward half and half triangles wrap. So I'm interested in exploring that once I get to it. I have decided on this occasion to do the wrap and turns rather than the German short rows that I've used both other times. I am still slipping the last edge stitch with my yarn held forward, and that creates a smooth edge, which I can show you there. So it just means I don't have garter bumps, but I can also show you on this too. Yeah, so it just creates a smooth edge rather than the garter bumps. You see that? And I do that on all my shawls. So there we go. That is my striped half and half triangles wrap that I have cast on, and it's going to be a long-term project. It's just going to be something which gets to sit there and I get to pull out in the evenings and work on, and it's just like for downtime, you know. It's a very relaxed long-term knit, but the fact that I use and have seen my daughter use her half and half triangles wrap so often, and how useful they are, because I know a lot of people speculated how much use you would actually get out of it. Well, I find that when I need a big cozy hug, when I need extra warmth, I wear these all the time. I would say they're actually some of my most worn shawls. I know there's a small version. I cannot imagine that I would get much use out of the small version, because then you're not getting the length on the diagonal that you need in order to be able to wrap it fully around. But I wear mine like this all the time. It sits underneath my jacket. I wear it with my leather jacket, even if it's not as cold. But I wear this all the time. And then in the mornings, quite often when it's a little bit chillier and I'm sitting having my cup of tea, I wrap it round myself like this in a more sort of traditional way, and it really kind of provides that warmth to the upper back and your neck, which I think can sometimes get a little bit chilly, but leaves my arms free and everything to have my cup of tea and do a couple of rows of my knitting. So I wear my half and half most mornings, and I wear it to go out when it's particularly chilly. And the other thing, of course, is when I wasn't well, is I got to use them as blankets, and really I had one wrapped up round here and had another on my lap, and they were just incredibly cozy and very warm. So I actually think they're very, very practical pieces which serve a number of different functions, and so that is why I have cast another one on, because I know that it's going to meet me in the knitting of it, but it's also going to meet me in the finished piece. So there we go, another half and half triangles wrap, but a bit different this time, the striped pattern. So I will feed back, because I know a lot of you have knitted the half and half triangles wrap, so I will feed back on how I get on with the striped version and these little different techniques that have been included in the pattern. I have one more one more whip, one more work in progress. Another slurp of my tea. And it is this. I have cast on a curvette, which is a beautiful and very simple pattern by Stephen West, because he does these very complex pieces and then he does these very simple, very beautiful, very elegant pieces as well, which really take one idea and magnify it across a whole garment or a whole shawl. Now, this one here I cast on yesterday. So as you can see, I've made quite good progress already. I am using some of the most special yarn I think I've ever used. That's because it is this. Last Monday, I had my birthday. I turned 44, all the fours, and my husband took me out for a lovely breakfast in the morning, and then in the afternoon my friend Jen took me to visit a herd of alpacas that have their home in the Pentland Hills, which is just on the outskirts of Edinburgh. But you can get a bus which drops you off with just like a 10-minute walk away from the alpacas. So that was excellent. It's very easy to get to. And the place is called Bobcat Alpacas, and that's because it's Bob and Kathleen. And Bob was the one that was there that was showing us around, and he introduced us to his herd of 67 alpacas who all have their own names and he is deeply familiar with all of them. He clearly loves them to pieces. It's just such a delight to witness somebody who, is working with animals who so clearly holds in such high regard and such high animal welfare standards, and it was a delight. So you're introduced to some of the male alpacas, and he tells you a little bit about them, about their names, and about their personalities, and about where they like to be If you could go when you go out for a walk, do they like to be at the front? Do they like to be at the back? Who are their pals? Who do they like to walk with? And then you choose your walking companion. So I chose, well, actually originally I chose a beautiful caramel coloured alpaca called Praline. And my friend Jen chose Marco Polo because Marco Polo and Praline are apparently best friends and they like to walk with each other. So we thought, excellent. However, Marco Polo was a little bit funny, and so we swapped alpacas, and I got Marco Polo and Jen got Praline, and Marco Polo settled down quite a lot and was just just a funny delight, and Praline was great, and we were there. I think there was a group of about 10 of us, and so we all got to choose alpacas. It was a sizable herd, and then we went on a 1.3 mile trek with the alpacas on this very gentle route around the Pentlands. I was a little bit concerned that with having had the flu so recently, I'm still struggling with my energy levels, that this would be a bit difficult, but actually the alpacas are not interested in walking, they're really interested in food. So they stop every 3-4 paces to munch on the verge, and so it's a very, very gentle walk, and 1.3 miles takes in excess of 90 minutes to get the whole way around. And you stop at various different places and Bob tells you various different facts about alpacas, and the whole thing was completely fabulous. Then we ended up back where we began, and we got to feed them grass pellets, and then we got to go up and visit the mamas and the babies that are in the other part of the field. And then at the very end we got to go and see the yarn cupboard, which is basically a cupboard full of yarn which has been spun from specific fleeces. I know, right? So I chose 2 balls of a 2-ply. This is 100 grams each, 571 meters. And this is from the alpaca called Tsarina. And this is her 2019 fleece. She was born on the 19th of July 2015, and there's her photo. Isn't that amazing? So this yarn is incredibly soft, as you might imagine. It's beautifully spun, is very, very drapey. I knew I wanted to use it for a project that would really allow its particular qualities to shine. And I think that can sometimes be a bit difficult with alpaca because it's such a drapey yarn. It creates such a drape within the fabric that it doesn't tend to create good stitch definition, and it also doesn't tend to hold a shape. But it's so soft and it's so drapey that it's actually perfect, I think, for a shawl such as this. So the curvette shawl is based on these stripes of garter and then these mohair eyelets. So I have paired my beautiful alpaca yarn up with this hand-dyed Qing fibre mohair silk. And I'm pretty sure this was the final skein in the club colourway that I did in spring. I think it was last year, 2021. I really enjoyed doing the club. I thought the colours were really interesting. Not necessarily ones that I would have chosen, but actually that was part of the fun, part of the joy, and then seeing how I wanted to use them. And so I'm adding that mohair with its neon pops and kind of rainbow with the neutral cream of the alpaca, I think is just... Do you know what it makes me think of? It makes me think of fairy cakes, you know, with the rainbow hundreds and thousands, the sprinkles that go on top of the buttercream. that's how I'm thinking of this shawl. Oh, and I should say too that it's being kept very safe and beautiful inside this bag, which is a cocoon tree bag. I think there's only 2 of these left, I was seeing. Maybe they've gone by now, but it's got the lovely orange tassel and it's just gorgeous velvet. And it's got the orange lining. Well, the thing about the cocoon tree bags, and I should say that my auntie is the person that makes these beautiful bags and has that company, and she gave this one to me. But the beautiful thing that she does is that she hand finishes all of them. So the details are just exquisite, and she just does such a beautiful job with them. So I know that she has quite a few in stock currently on her Etsy shop, so you have a good variation of choice. So you might want to go on and see, maybe treat yourself, or perhaps you know a knitter that might like a beautiful bag for Christmas, and she does have some Christmas themed bags as well. But yeah, I think she only had 2 of these left. So that's where I'm keeping this beautiful curvette. And that's all my works in progress for just now. What's next on my needles? To be honest, I don't really know what's next on my needles. I've been so focused on trying to get my finished objects that I've shared today off the needles, particularly the Kilt hose and the gift knit and Felix and the MCAL. So really getting those done, and then turning back to the Cargill that I had already cast on. So that's been my slower work in progress, and that's really getting the majority of my attention right now. I have these 2 beautiful shawl projects on the needles, so I won't be adding another shawl imminently onto my needles until these are complete. Well, certainly until the curvette is complete. I think the half and half will be on the needles for a good long while. So I don't really have anything that's really pressing. I know that we had mentioned doing a lentil cal in collaboration with Rebecca from the Creabea podcast, and we do still intend to do that, but we're maybe looking at the new year for that now, and that's particularly because I've had such a difficult October. So yes, I think we're going to push that back. Once everybody's finished their gift knitting, we'll be able to dive into some really simple, really lovely, beautiful raglan jumpers, and use up some of the beautiful yarn perhaps in our stash. So yes, that won't be until the new year. So that's something that will be on my needles, but not for a wee while yet. But I do want to share with you what is new to me, because like I said, it was my birthday at the beginning of last week. And my auntie gave me this beautiful skein. Look at this, it's glowing. This beautiful skein of 100% mulberry silk. And it's Araucania yarns. And it's 200 meters. So I need to think of a beautiful project where I can really use this to best effect. So if you've got some ideas, I could do like a Sophie scarf, you know, like the little one I could do until I've got 100 meters, until I've got half the skein left, and then start to decrease. So it would be quite a small one. But to be honest, I've knitted one of those already, and it's lovely, and I'm not really wearing it. Perhaps it's not the season to be wearing it anyway, and that's fine. But I would much rather, I think, pair this up. I think Hohi's got a couple of patterns, and I can't remember the name. There's one particular pattern where she pairs up yarn, I think might be 4-ply, with mohair to create a semicircular shawl. So I might look at something like that, where I can pair this up with some mohair, or some brushed alpaca silk, or some suri or something like that, so that the 2 yarns can really play with each other, and I end up with a larger, more usable garment. And I think that would really be a lovely use for this beautiful silk. The other thing that is new to me is inside this bag. I decided, because it was my birthday, I decided to go and treat myself. And I went to Be Inspired Fibres and I bought some yarn for the Fibre Knitting Cal, which is the Stephen West Shawl Cal, which starts on the 26th of December. So I have lots of time to wait. It's the shawl this year is called the Aurora Cabin Shawl. It is just so beautiful. It's a large semicircular shawl with colour work that's created through slip stitches. I think it looks fascinating. I am really very enthused by it and looking forward to casting on. I was very tempted just to cast on straight away, but I've now managed to delay myself by casting on the curvette, so that's good. And yes, so I will show you the colours that I have chosen. And let me see, there it is. These are the colours that I have chosen for my Aurora Cabin. So these are all Azare Highland wool, which you get 275 meters to 50 grams. And so I've got 2 balls of each to make the yarn requirement. So this colour here is called Chocolate. This one is Chili. You can see how it's like heathered. It's almost got like a goldish fleck through it. This is Curry. This is Rhubarb. And this is Ice Blue. So there we go. That's probably quite an accurate representation of the colours there. So the Highland wool is really lovely. It's very soft. I've knitted garment with this before. In fact, I've knitted 2 garments with this before. I used this yarn in the colour Sky for the Rocket Tea, which actually I held. The stripe in that was one of the Qing Fibre Mohair Silk Club colourways. So I used that, and the other garment I have using this is a ranunculus, and I held it with the Azare Silk Mohair, and I think that was in the colour Stone. So I have worked with this yarn before. I knew this is what I wanted to use for this particular shawl, because I think it's a little bit more cosy and a little bit more rustic. I think it will be a really lovely winter project to cast on, and yeah, I'm going to hold off until the knit along begins on the 26th of December, and I will just need to distract myself from all of that beautiful yarn before I get to that point. So so that's what's new to me. Oh, and I've got one last thing that's new to me, which was an incredibly beautiful gift. And I received notification that I had a parcel to go and collect from the Royal Mail Collection Office. So I went, picked it up. I had no idea what it was going to be. And then I opened it up when I got home, and it was this. How incredibly beautiful is this? My friend Rachel, when she found out about my gran, sent me this beautiful jumper that she's knitted for me. It's a ranunculus, just like the one I was just mentioning. I'm not sure what the yarn is that she has used for it, but she did send me her leftovers. So I know that she's held it with this mohair, which is kid mohair, 70%, 30% silk, and it's from To The Max, which I think is Jodie from the Grocery Girls. I think it's her yarn dyeing company before they became Frankie Gray Fibres. So this incredibly beautiful mohair silk, and then she's given me these 2 little skeins here, which I think are also part of the garment. And it is just, the camera's not really doing it justice. It's better further back actually. It is just the most bright and beautiful shade. And it's so soft. And, you know, as knitters, we do know, or as makers, we know the effort that goes into making something. And so when we receive a gift that has been made for us by somebody's hands and their time and their skill and their resources, it just means such an incredible amount. You know, it just means so much, and it's just such a lovely thing. So I'm just absolutely thrilled with this. It was such a lovely thing to receive in the post. So there we go. That's also new to me. Thank you so much, Rachel. It was honestly just such a delightful and beautiful gift. So thank you. Okay, what else? What's bringing me joy? Let's move on to that. So the alpacas were not my only animal encounter in the month of October. At one point during quite early on in October, I can't remember whether it was, I think it was maybe just after my grand's funeral, my friend Jen took me out to the Chihuahua Cafe. She was going with her son and her niece, and the Chihuahua Cafe requires has a one adult to one child policy. So I was drafted in very happily because I love dogs, and so I don't have a dog and I've never owned a dog, but I do really like them. So it was a real treat to go to the Chihuahua Cafe. It's a small cafe on Frederick Street, which is just off Princess Street, so a very central location. And yet, when you go in, it's like a little sanctuary. It's like a little peaceful bubble. There are, I think, 9 Chihuahuas. And I was kind of anticipating that all being a little bit hectic and a bit yappy and a bit loud. But it wasn't at all. They were all very, very well trained. What I really appreciated was, again, the very high animal welfare standards, and the very clear love and affection that exists from their carers and their owners, and so they were very attentive to the Chihuahuas, which was a lovely thing to witness and also to participate in. We were each provided with lap blankets, and the Chihuahuas then chose where they wanted to sit. You weren't to pick them up or anything, you just allow them to go and move where they want to. So I got to sit with a beautiful little Chihuahua on my lap, and the Chihuahua that I got to sit with for the longest was one which is in training to be in the next stage performance of Legally Blonde. So, which I thought was really cool. So she's a star, obviously. And then you can order teas and coffees and snacks and things. You book an hour-long slot, and yeah, it was just I just found it delightful, and it was exactly what I needed when I needed it, without knowing that's what it was. That's what was required. On Netflix, we've been completing our viewing of Schitt's Creek, which had been recommended to us by my son Xander, and we really enjoyed that. It's really provided some levity and some distraction and some joy, and we got to the end of the last season just the other week there, and so yeah, really enjoyed that. And then we watched the kind of the making of the final season documentary and kind of its cultural impact and what it's meant to people and things, and I found that very moving, and I really enjoyed that too. So yes, if you've not taken the plunge, I'm pretty sure I'm one of the very last people that's taking the plunge. I would recommend, and I would also say, as with many of these things, I think they kind of hit their stride after the first season. So if you start watching it and you think maybe it's not for you, maybe continue and keep going with it, because I think it's one of these slow burns that really kind of you build a lot of affection for as you go through it season by season. So So that was one thing that we've been watching. We also watched Rings of Power, which I think I've mentioned to you before. We got to the finale of Rings of Power and watched it and went, oh my goodness, I need to watch it again from the beginning. So we rewatched Rings of Power from the beginning. Rings of Power has felt like a very significant piece for me because I do watch The Hobbit in Betwixtmas, the extended editions. And then I also watch the Lord of the Rings extended editions in the first week of the new year. So J.R. Tolkien is really my companion as one year ends and another begins. And I've had that tradition for many, many years. So having Rings of Power has really felt like an addition, a very welcome addition to that narrative and to that companion, that story companion. We also watched The House of the Dragon. I'm not really sure why I added it onto my What Brings Me Joy other than we finished it. That's terrible. I did not really enjoy House of the Dragon. I thought it was good storytelling. I thought it was quite well acted. I thought it had that kind of epic scale to it. I don't know, maybe it was just in the wrong frame of mind for it, or I'm not really sure, but I didn't enjoy it as much as I expected to, and I feel like I ended up just watching the last episodes because, you know, it was unfinished and my husband was enjoying it, so we persisted and watched it the whole way through, but I won't be going back to the beginning to watch it all the way through from the beginning again. So that probably tells you everything you need to know. Music-wise, Taylor Swift's Midnights released. It's a much poppier version of her music than perhaps the previous few releases, like Evermore and can't remember what the other one was called, but I really like her folkier music, but I have been really enjoying Midnights, and I find some of the tracks really get stuck in my head. So I found that actually the song Anti-Hero had shown up in one of my dreams. That's when you know that a song has really kind of got into your subconscious, when it shows up in your dreams. So yes, I'm dreaming of Taylor Swift's music, and so there's that. On the day before, a couple of days before my birthday, when I went to Be Inspired to pick up the wool for the Aurora Cabin shawl, I decided to pop along to Sugar Daddy's, which is a gluten-free bakery in Marchmont. Now, if you do come to Edinburgh to go to Be Inspired or to do a yarn shop crawl, then you probably want to, and particularly if you're gluten-free, you might want to stop off at Sugar Daddy's. It doesn't have any tables or chairs, unfortunately. It's not a seated cafe or anything. Like it certainly used to be pre-pandemic, but now it's just a counter service. And I picked up some cheese and caramelised onion scones. I love a cheese scone. It's one of the things that I really miss with being with not being able to have gluten. So yes, I picked myself up some cheese scones, and I picked up a couple of slices of a fig and raspberry cake for my husband, because it was also his birthday just a few days before my birthday. So that was delightful and a really lovely treat. I'm kind of glad that it's on the other side of town from me, and I have to make a real effort to go to it, because I think if it was any closer, I would probably be there all the time. I think all my money might go on gluten-free treats. But yes, it's well worth checking out if you are going to pop in to Be Inspired. It's about a 2-minute walk, a 2-3-minute walk away from Be Inspired. Another couple of cafes in Edinburgh that I've been really enjoying. One is called Oko, OQO, and we had my birthday breakfast in Oko, and they had gluten-free bread. So I was able to have avocado toast with a couple of extra poached eggs, and that's my breakfast nirvana. It was really good. We had actually intended to go to a different cafe called Under the Arch, which also has a really good range of gluten-free food, which is down Leith Walk. But we arrived at 20 to 10 and discovered that it doesn't open till 10. And it was raining. So we didn't really want to stand outside for 20 minutes. So we walked up Leith Walk towards Elm Row and went to Oko, which is another of our favourites. So that was really lovely. The day after my birthday was our silver wedding anniversary. Frank and I have been married for 25 years. We got married the day after my 19th birthday, for those who are doing the maths in their head. And we got married in the Scandic Crown, which is now the Radisson Blue on the Royal Mile. And it rained all day that day too. So we were celebrating that on Tuesday, and my daughter and her lovely partner Sam had sent us a hamper from the Deli Society, and we got the Italian box, which was 3 different types of cheeses and a selection of 3 different salamis and a salsicce, and we also got a lovely bottle of Montepulciano wine and some gluten-free crackers and a bar of beautiful chocolate. So that was a complete delight. So we had that for lunch and it was completely lovely. The package comes with a QR code which you can follow through, and it takes you to a website. The website has a link to a Spotify playlist, so you can listen to a playlist while you enjoy your hamper. And it's also then got information about each one of the items in your box, and you can click through for tasting notes and for pairings. Some of them even have like videos where you can watch a little bit about the production of them. So it was just a really immersive experience like I've never had before. So I really enjoyed it. Apparently they also have a French one and a Spanish one. Each of the items from each of the producers demonstrates their connection with these very small producers, and it's just done in such a lovely, such a lovely way. We really enjoyed it. I would absolutely look at getting another. Apparently they switch up some of the items as you go along. I think particularly the wines change every so often. And I would absolutely buy it as a gift as well. I think it would be a really lovely Christmas gift. So I'm thinking of that for a few folk I know that I think would really appreciate it. So the Deli Society was another thing that really brought me joy. I'm really getting a bit of a scratchy throat here, so we're coming towards the end, folks. Podcasts. Stephen of the Mingled Yarncast is completely delightful. He's got a brand new podcast. I think there's only 3 episodes up at the moment. He is a consummate storyteller and he knits just beautiful garments and beautiful shawls. I highly recommend you go and check him out. I think you'll really enjoy what he has to share. I've also been watching the Sunday Knitting Society with Chelsea. I've really enjoyed going back and watching her previous episodes. I think the first one I watched was actually episode 4, which was when she was speaking about her trip to Rhinebeck. So I was having major Rhinebeck FOMO. And so I really got to enjoy the experience vicariously through Chelsea. And then I went back and watched the previous episodes, and I think she's got episode 5 is already up, where she talks about her trip to Amsterdam and her visits to some of the yarn shops there. So I really enjoyed that, and that takes me on to the Creabea, who also went to Amsterdam, and she did a really lovely episode where she visits 3 yarn shops in Amsterdam, and I think you'll really enjoy that as well. Okay, so that's everything that's bringing me joy, which will bring me on to the poem to conclude our time together. So I really hope that you've enjoyed today's podcast, and I do hope to be back a lot sooner than this past period of time. But I'm going to close with this particular poem because it's one that I've been thinking about a lot, and it's by Mary Oliver, and it's called In Blackwater Woods. Look, the trees are turning their own bodies into pillars of light, are giving off the rich fragrance of cinnamon and fulfillment. The long tapers of cattails are bursting and floating away over the blue shoulders of the ponds, and every pond, no matter what its name is nameless now. Every year, everything I have ever learned in my lifetime leads back to this, the fires and the black river of loss, whose other side is salvation, whose meaning none of us will ever know. To live in this world, you must be able to do 3 things. To love what is mortal, to hold it against your bones knowing your own life depends on it, and, when the time comes to let it go, to let it go. Okay, my darlings, until next time, sending you all much love.